coming into this week, we have CPI on Wednesday and PCE on Friday. Those are the two big data days that we have. Unemployment claims is important, but I would say Wednesday and Friday are the big days we have this week. Monday and Tuesday, pretty light. Personally, because of the US and Iran conflict that's going on, I think that situation overrides any news or red folder news that we get this week so far. If we get any updates on things easing out, we could potentially maybe, who knows, see a rally in the markets. Or if things start to escalate even further and oil prices continue to rise, we could see more downside in the markets. But volatility is something that we for sure would have this week. So reducing my position size is something I am doing. I am being picky with what I take and just being very mindful of the trading conditions. This is not where you put on a lot of risk. So I'm going to go over the charts and what I'm watching coming into this week. Now on the SPY, personally, we closed on the 672. We closed at 672.46. And this week, my bias basically is if we can get above this 676 level, retest it, and then push higher into this gap fill area. That's one scenario I'm watching for. Whatever happens in this area here of 681.44, if we fail, we could see more downside into last week's lows. But if we are able to break above the 681.44, then we could potentially go higher into 686 and potentially into this gap fill at 689. Now, that's just me being like optimistic and trading the levels. If we then see failures at 689, then we just trade the levels coming back down as well. Another scenario that I'm watching is if for some reason we don't even get buyers early into the week and we fail last week's lows at 669.85, then the next level I'll be looking to target is 664. And then if 664 does not hold, we have 661.59 and potentially a gap fill at 659. Let's see what happens this week. Be mindful to trade the levels and reduce position size. As for QQQ, this one has just been in a chop fest. Scenarios are pretty similar, but let's see. We closed at 599.81 last week. In my opinion, if we're able to get above 605.99, basically 606, and do something like this, retest it, we could potentially fill this gap at 608.90s. Above 608.90s, there's a chance we could trade higher into 610s and then 612 30s. As for downside scenarios, if we end up rejecting this 605, 606 level, we can come back down into this 597 level. If 597 fails on QQQ, then we have last week's lows at 592.03 and potentially a gap fill at 589.40. That's how I'm looking at the indices coming into this week. And as for individual names, I don't really like a lot of the individual names, but in case we get the scenarios I'm watching out for, NVIDIA, I'm not particularly interested in trading NVIDIA to the upside, if I'm being honest, unless we break and hold above this gap fill level of 184.89. I am not looking for longs, but as for downside, I am watching the video to see if we fail this 174.60 level, which is the low from March 2nd. If we fail that level, there's a clean move down to 171.89, which is a gap fill level as well. And we'll look to see if this 171 holds on the video. But that's all I'm watching on the video. Upside, pretty limited. I am not interested in this chop area. This is just chop, in my opinion. If it's still within this 177 183 range, it's going to be difficult to trade. Not impossible, but I'm just saying it might be a little difficult to trade. As for Apple, I am watching Apple here. Apple 254. 254 because 254, if you go on the higher time frames, it's held this level repeatedly. If you go on the daily time frame, you can see that it's an area that has once price comes into, it's able to like hold. Like right here in February, we came down into this area and then we saw price try to move higher into 276, but it failed. Now if this area of support fails again, this 254 fails, I would see Apple probably moving down into 252 and potentially 250s. That's what I see on Apple. As for longs, I'm not really interested in Apple longs until it reclaims this 266.263 level. Market's in a really tricky spot right now. Tesla, I think is my favorite setup towards the downside if we get it this week. If we are unable to hold this support level that Tesla has been holding since last year when we've been getting like failures, right? Like it's lots of sales. If it fails this 282 level, there's room back down to so if it fails 382.78, there's room down to 270.91, and potentially this gap fill from September when we had a strong Tesla rally. So that's what I'm watching on Tesla. And as for upside, I want to see last week's highs break 410s. If 410s does not break, there's it's just going to be a tricky like long setup if you even see any on Tesla. So 410s, and then if 410s holds, then we can trade into this 417.39 gap fill. That's what I have for Tesla. Until 410 breaks, I wouldn't even be looking at any upside options, and that's why the chart looks like this. Next name I have is AMD. AMD is becoming annoying to trade now. When it was annoying last year to trade because it was not moving and it just eats your money, it's coming back down to those levels again. So AMD, as for upside, I am not interested until it breaks above this 204.83 for a chance to fill the gap at 210.86. As for downside with AMD, it's pretty tricky, but 188, 180, 180, 180, 188.71 and this 187.28 area, I would say 187. If 187 fails, next level is 185, and 185 fails, next level is 118.93. That's what I'm watching on AMD, and potentially we could just see a slow grind lower until it fills that gap from last year, which was in October. So let's see if AMD does 360 back down to the levels where it was trading at last year. Last name on the list is PLTR. This name has been basically benefiting from the war situation because potentially they're like buyers are buying it because of the Iran and US conflict. That's what I'm thinking is moving this name. So coming into this week, if PLTR is able to get above Friday's high 161 here, we can see 165. I would not be interested in really shorting this name again until 150 fails, and then you can see potentially a gap fill back down into 147.27, and maybe we can now trade lower into this 138. But that's it. Like I feel like the indices like SPY and QQQ have more value and trade ideas and scenarios that we can play off coming into this week. But just be mindful, size accordingly, and just trade the levels. Don't try to speculate or front run anything. I'll see you on next week's Outlook. Live stream is going to start next week as well, so I'll be doing this live on YouTube. So make sure you subscribe to my main channel and tune in to get this live breakdown, and I'll be answering some questions as well.